everyone to the eighth genre storytelling series, Myths and Fables, put on by the Storytelling Association of California. We're so glad that you were able to attend. I know today's St. Patrick's Day, and many of you have events that overlap with this, but for those of you who can make it, we appreciate it. So we have seven outstanding storytellers from all over, and you'll hear about their introductions. Our first teller is Kathy Martinez, and she represents the Motherlode Storytelling Guild in the Sierra Mountains. She has told stories for, been a member for 10 years. She's told stories for 25 years. She's been a member of SAC for that long. And she volunteers for all kinds of events, is told at schools, colleges, libraries, museums. Her main focus has been Native American stories. And tonight, she is going to bring us a Native American tale. So please welcome Kathy Martinez.
Good evening. The story that I'm going to be telling you is from the Great Basin area, which is roughly between the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Nevada area. It's called Why Butterflies Fly Crooked. Coyote just walked out of his house. It was early morning and he stretched and he noticed that the sun was shining and it was going to be an absolutely gorgeous day, perfect to take a nap. So he went down the side of the hill and laid there in the sun and was just about dozed off when his wife came out of the door and said, Coyote, don't you sleep right now. I need you to go down to the river and get me some watercress because I'm cooking soup tonight and I need it for my soup. Go hurry up, Coyote, wake up. Don't fall asleep. So Coyote got up and said, okay, I'll get a nap later. So he walked down the hill to the river, and he started, and he was going to collect watercress right away. But he thought, it's such a gorgeous day, it's such a warm morning, I'm going to take a nap. So he took a nap. Unbeknownst to him, that in the bushes nearby was a huge flock of butterflies. And they saw Coyote stretched out in the warm sun, and they started giggling to one another and said, you know what? Let's play a joke on Coyote. He'll never figure this out. And they all said, yeah, let's do it. So they all flew over to Coyote and they got around him, and through the hundreds of butterflies, they picked him up and flew him back to his house and laid him in the same spot that he was laying off before. And then they flew away into the bush next by and they started giggling. Well, hour or two later, here comes Mrs. Coyote again, and she looked out the door and she goes, there's Coyote still sleeping on the ground. And she walked up to him and hit him. Coyote, wake up. You're supposed to go get me some watercress. And he goes, what? What am I doing here? Wait a minute. I did. I went to the river. I was going to pick it up. She said, yeah, Coyote, sure. I need the watercress for my soup. Go get me some more. So Coyote said, okay. So he started walking down the hill again, and he walked and he got to the river. When he got to the river, he thought, well, it's such a gorgeous day. Why not take a little nap? Okay, I'll get the watercress. So he stretched out again in the warm morning sun. The butterflies followed him back down the hill, and they saw that he's sound asleep again, snoring away. So they said, oh, let's do it again. Let's pick him up. So they all gathered around, they started picking him up, and they flew him back to the same spot where he was before. Well, hours later, his wife walked out the door because he hasn't come back with the watercress yet. And she saw him still sleeping in the same spot that he was before. And she got really mad, walked up and kicked him again. I said, Coyote, you said you were going to get me some watercress. Go down the hill and get it to me now. I need it for my soup. And he woke up and he looked around and he said, what happened? What am I did. I walked down. I know I did. And she said, I don't care. Go, leave right now. And I'm watching you, making sure you go. So she watches him as he's walking down the hill again, still wondering, how did he didn't dream it. He didn't. What? So as the butterflies were giggling again in the bush, they flew down, and sure enough, he got down to the bottom of the river again and said, "Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to the, I'll collect the watercress." And so he did, and he put it down. He goes, "But this is really tiring work. By now it's afternoon. I'm going to be fine. I finished my nap because I know I wanted a nap." So he sounds asleep again, snoring away, and the butterflies start giggling all over again. He said, "Oh my God, we got to do this again. This is great." But the third time they picked him up, instead of flying straight, because his weight was so heavy, and they're little tiny things, they started going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And when they got to him, they put him exact same spot, and they flew to the bush again and started giggling. But they noticed when they flew to the bush, it wasn't a straight line. It was kind of crooked. And they thought, oh well. So here comes Mrs. Coyote again, screaming her head off at Coyote, telling him to go get the watercress. And he said, "Oh, I did. I did." And she goes, "I don't care. I'm watching you again. You go down there. You went down, but you didn't collect it and you didn't bring it back up. I wouldn't be surprised if you fell asleep down there again." So Coyote, okay. So he walked down and he got the water. He saw the watercress. So what is going on? He picks it up. And then that's when he heard the butterflies giggling and laughing their head off, saying, "Oh, Coyote, we played a joke on you. We did it. We flew you back up to your spot. It was a great joke." And Coyote went, yeah, funny. So he walks up the hill. He gives his wife the watercress and tells his wife what the butterflies did to him. And she just had a good laugh and loved every minute of it. And the butterflies are giggling too. And so she said, "You know what? I'll make the soup. Butterflies, you stay for dinner too. There'll be plenty enough to eat and we'll have a good time tonight." And so they did. They had a wonderful soup and dinner. But when the butterflies left the house to go home, they weren't flying straight. They were flying crooked. And they turned around and looked at Coyote and said, "What did you do?" Coyote said, "Yeah, that was a good joke. This is your payment for it. You'll never be able to fly straight again. No matter however you fly, you and your children and your grandchildren will fly crooked from now on."
Oh, fantastic. Excellent sense of humor, and I love your energy. Well done. And coyote tales, there's some of the best tales around. There's so many varieties of them, and I'm sure you know many of them. Okay, so our next storyteller comes to us from India. I heard her at a festival in India about a year ago. We were both telling a story there and got to meet each other. And she so impressed me with her energy and unique storytelling styles that I invited her to join the local storytelling group that I belong to, the Sacramento Storytellers Guild, and she did. And she joined SAC and also has told stories with the Contra Costa Tail Spinners and with the local group, and definitely is an international person. She is a coach. She's a story therapist. She studied psychodrama in Boston, and she is going to bring to us tonight a style of storytelling that I had never heard of. And I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I'm going to let her pronounce it for you. So please welcome Ramya Srinita from India.
Good evening. Good evening, all of you. It's, of course, a beautiful morning for me here in India, 7:30 a.m. So I am so delighted to be here. Thank you so much, Ed. Thanks for the wonderful introduction. I'm honored to be here. So today, the storytelling that I'm bringing to you is a Kamishibai style of storytelling. It is a form of storytelling that, of course, originated in Japan and way back in the 12th century, where Buddhist monks used to use scrolls or pictures to tell moral stories to their disciples. Kamishibai simply means paper drama. Kami is paper and shibai means drama or theater. So story cards are used to depict stories. So that's a brief introduction about Kamishibai. And what I have here is a small makeshift Kamishibai theater. Of course, the professional one looks much different, but this is something that I've made for myself. And also the Kamishibai tellers use clappers like this. In Kamishibai theaters are basically situated or fixed on cycles, and the storyteller, goes with the stories to different places and just fixes it up, sets up the stage, and starts telling stories to children. So it's very interesting. I learned it from a professional group from Australia who were teaching this, and I'm so fascinated. Uh, the visuals or the pictures that I have done are illustrations that have been done by me. And of course, the story is from a myth from my from the Hindu mythology. It's based on Ramayana. So before I start the story, I would just probably just give you a little bit of backstory to it. So this is the beautiful Kamishibai theatre. I'll just draw the camera a little closer so that the focus is on the So the story this evening is based from Ramayana, which is one of the two great epics in Hindu mythology, Ramayana and Mahabharata. Ramayana is a story of Sita and Sri Ram. Ram is, there's a myth, there's a belief that the supreme deity took 10 incarnations or avatars on this earth to restore cosmic peace. And his 7th avatar was that of Sri Ram. And in his avatar, he took to slay the demon Ravan. Ravan is a demon with 10 heads. Ravan had abducted his wife Sita, and Sri Ram had to go and slay this evil demon. And throughout this, Sri Ram was assisted by his disciple, friend, confidant, Hanuman, the monkey god. And the entire story of Ramayana is believed to have written by the great sage Valmiki. So today is a story when Valmiki, the great sage, had just finished writing the Ramayana. हम कथा सुनाए राम सकल गुण दाम की हम कथा सुनाए राम सकल गुण दाम की. Valmiki was so excited. He was thrilled that he just finished writing the great epic Ramayana. He was so happy that the epic was finally done, and he wanted to show it off to the entire world. He wanted to show everybody what an amazing work he had created. So he went off on his own trip, showing off his work. He showed the Ramayana to the fire god Agni. Wah, 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 wah. Great work, said the fire god. He showed his work to Varuna, and he was mighty impressed and said, I have never seen something so brilliant. What a great work you've written, Valmiki, said Varuna. Now, our Valmiki, the great poet, was getting lots and lots more boastful, and he went and said, aha, what do you think of my work? He showed all the elements, the wind, the water, the space, and everybody said only one thing. Wow, this is so amazing. What a fabulous work that you have done. We have never seen something so beautiful. What prose, what poetry, what characterization, and look at the drama, look at the, oh, it's wonderful, said all the elements. He went and showed his work to the great Ganges, the lovely river that flows, and she said, wow, this is amazing, Valmiki. Oh, look at how you have portrayed the pains and the joys, and then he showed it to the great goddesses. All of them were mighty impressed, and great appreciations flowed Valmiki's way. Then Valmiki wanted to show his work to Narad. Well, the sage Narad is somebody who can walk through all different. He can go to the heavens, he can come to the earth, he can reach the nethers. He's a very learned scholar, and everybody respected his word, and he knew everything. So when Valmiki showed the work to sage Narad, Narad said, Narayana, Narayana, this is very good. However, Valmiki was like, what do you mean, however? What do you mean, but? I said, no, this is good. I have seen better, said Valmiki. Sage Narad. Valmiki was like, what do you mean, better? I mean, I'm the only one who has ever written the great Ramayana. And what do you mean you've seen better? Valmiki, Narad said, I have seen better work, and who has written a work better than mine? Oh, well, that's written by Hanuman. Hanuman, that monkey? Said Valmiki. That little monkey who can climb the mountains and pick up fruits and fight with the demons. But what does the monkey know about prose, about poetry, about literature? I am the learned man, I'm the scholar. And what do you mean? A monkey has written something better, said Valmiki. And he said, where can I find this monkey? To that Valmiki said, Hanuman lives amidst two great mountains. A valley between two great mountains is where there is a beautiful plantain grove, and where the rivers flow so peacefully. You can find Hanuman there, said Valmiki. Said Narad. Immediately Valmiki set off and he said, I'm going to find that monkey and I'm going to see what work he has written, and I'm sure it can't be better than mine. And he set off on his journey. And on his journey, he asked for directions from the sun, from the moon, from birds and animals, and everybody watched as Valmiki was walking really fiercely, and he wanted to find out where this monkey Hanuman resides. And then, as he was walking, he came to a beautiful forest. Na, 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 na. And there was a beautiful forest, and Valmiki was sitting there. He did not find Hanuman anywhere, and just when he looked up, wait a minute, on those huge plantain leaves, something seems to have been written. Valmiki pulled a leaf closer to himself and started reading. The entire Ramayana was written on 5 plantain leaves. And when Valmiki read this Ramayana, he had tears in his eyes. Oh, what a wonderful Ramayana. What a great story. How beautifully written. It is so simple. It is amazing. And that means nobody will ever read my Ramayana. Nobody will ever read the Valmiki Ramayana, because this Ramayana which Hanuman has written is splendid, is the best I have ever seen. And nobody will read mine, and all my work is doomed. And he cried and cried, and everybody, the butterflies, the birds, the wind, everything stopped to see Valmiki in such great sorrow. Just then, Just then a very warm hand came on Valmiki's shoulder. A warm hand was placed and said, "Why are you crying?" There was so much warmth. There was love and kindness in that voice. And Valmiki looked back and said, "Ah, Hanuman." And immediately he bowed to him and he said, "I just read the Ramayana that you have written on these leaves, and they're so great and they're amazing. It's just that nobody will ever read my Ramayana." And he cried and he sobbed. Well, Hanuman quickly plucked those leaves on which he had written and he crushed them and made a huge ball. Valmiki was like, "Wait, what are you doing? Well, it's amazing. The work is so good. You have to get that published." And he just crushed it and he said, "What are you doing? Why are you crushing it?" And without a second thought, the entire ball was in Hanuman's mouth. And Hanuman chewed all that. And Hanuman told Valmiki, "Don't worry, Valmiki. Now, only your work is going to be famous. Only your work will be read by people, and everybody will say, Valmiki's Ramayana." Valmiki was like, "Why did you do that? I mean, it must have taken you a lot of work, and that was so well written." Hanuman said, "The Ramayana that you have written is for the world to see, is for people to read. The Ramayana that I have written is for my love, my devotion for Lord Ram. So that's okay. I didn't write for publicity. I didn't write for fame. I have written it for my Ram," he said. Na 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 na. Since that day onwards, till today, Valmiki's Ramayana is read, is told, retold in many, 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 many ways. All around the world, it's told as puppet stories, as plays, as dramas, as singing, dancing, and people celebrate the birth, celebrate the joy of Lord Sri Ram everywhere. Ta-na, na, 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 na. Ta-na, na, 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 na. Ta-na, na, 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 ta, na, na. Thank you very much. I hope all of you have enjoyed this presentation of a myth from my stories, the Ramayana.
Thank you so much, Ramya. Thank you so much for taking us on this journey with this captivating storytelling style from the 12th century, Japanese style. I'd never seen this before, and I was really excited to see it. And as usual, I admire your storytelling talent, your expressiveness, and how creative you are, and just the way you used your gestures to show off the story, and we can still see part of your face. And very precious. I'm going to see if I can pronounce this correctly. So, is it Kamish? Oh,
it's Kami Shibai.
Kamishibai.
Kamishibai. Now you got it right, Ed.
Kamishibai. Okay. So I'm sure that's something we can all look up and hear more about. So again, thank you so much for being up at 7:30 in the morning there in India to share stories with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone. Thanks for all the wonderful comments.
James, are you here? James Hawkins. Okay. All right. So our next storyteller is Jim Hawkins. I had the pleasure of meeting him at a storytelling group run by Tony Toledo in the Boston area that meets every Friday. And it's a really interesting group of people, maybe 10, 12 people that show up and maybe someone shares a story, but most of the time we just share our lives and what's going on. It's a really fun group, and Jim has lots of interesting stories, and we play a word game that's really fun. We take 3 letters like FEC, and then we create short little words with those three letters. It's a lot of fun. Um, Jim has been telling stories for quite a while. He's been an English teacher for 39 years. He's retired now, and his heritage is from Ireland. I think you told me that you moved from New York to Ireland when you were 1 year old. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was born in New York, and my parents went back to where my mom grew up, and I lived there for 10 years before coming back to New York.
Well, Jim is a master storyteller, especially of Irish tales and personal tales also. So he's now hails in Long Island. So it's 3 hours later there. Please welcome Jim Hawkins.
Oh, thank you very much, Ed, and thank you all for being here and welcoming me. I thought since it's St. Patrick's Day, it would be appropriate to tell a story about St. Patrick. Before I get into the story, I'm sure many of you know about him, but in case people might not know of his background, basically, different cultures have been arguing about where Patrick was born. It seems to come down that he was either Italian or he was English, which would be rather ironical. From what we know about him, his family was a wealthy family in Rome. His father was some kind of a politician, but at some point, the family moved to England, and this was in the 5th century. Now, it was very common for Irish groups, many times, actually, in a sense, gangs would raid the English countryside, and of course, plundering, looking for money or whatever they could steal, and many times they kidnap people. So in one of these raids, Patrick was 17 years of age, and he was kidnapped, and he was placed in a place up in the north of Ireland, a place called Slieve Nish. And Slieve in the Irish language means mountain, and Nish, a place of coldness. Now, he was in terrible conditions. He wasn't well fed, he wasn't well clothed. And one night in desperation, he prayed to God. He said, God, basically, if you can get me out of this, I will spend my life in your service. Well, one night a voice came to him in his dreams and said, walk to the sea. There'll be a ship there waiting for you. So when he got to the sea, there was a ship there. Captain at first was a little hesitant, but then took him on. He eventually got back to England, became a priest, as he had promised God. But he had no intentions of really going back to Ireland. But then in his dreams, and they were almost like nightmares, he heard the people of Ireland calling to him, Patrick, come back, we need you, please come back. And back he goes. They made him a bishop and arrived in the year 432. And it said between 432 and 461, when he died, he converted Ireland. He converted almost Ireland from paganism to Christianity. Now, there's a wonderful storyteller by the name of Eddie Lenehan. He's from Crusheen, County Clare in Ireland. And he tells a series of stories called St. Patrick Was a Gentleman. And from what I know, they're sort of, historically, I think they're fairly true, except that Eddie tells them with a touch of humor. And he's been kind enough to give me permission to tell his stories. So this is my favorite story from that collection, and it's called St. Patrick and the Strange Curse. Now, St. Patrick was a very unpredictable man. And could you believe him? Could you blame him? Considering the kind of people he had to deal with when he was trying to convert Ireland. But one time it was November, and he was down in the County Tipperary in a place called Cashel, and it was terribly cold and damp and rainy, and he was looking for a place for himself and his followers to stay. And because he was in Cashel Nari, Cashel of the King, he thought he'd find a higher class of people. So he went up to this one house and he knocked on the door. The man opened it. Patrick introduced himself, told him what he wanted. The man started to laugh at him. What do you think? You think we're running a hotel around here for the likes of you? You see the white thorn bush over there? There's plenty of room there for yourself and your followers to spend the night. Well, obviously, Patrick was not happy with this response, and his followers were shivering in glee to see how Patrick was going to put this ignorant buddock in his place. And Patrick didn't do that. He spoke in his gentle voice and raised his hand over the man. And he said, "May your house be the highest. May your cattle be the whitest. And may you marry the most beautiful woman in the community." Well, Patrick's followers were saying, "Oh my God, what is the matter with him? What is he saying? How did he say that this man who insulted him and treated him so badly?" But no one said anything because it was Patrick. And that man, discovering who had blessed him, decided to take advantage of it. He built the tallest house up in the highest part of the mountain, of course, to bring attention to himself. And then he went out and he bought a herd of white cattle, also to bring attention to himself. And as it turned out, he did marry the most beautiful woman in the community. Well, Patrick continued his travels, and about a week later, he was down in the county Wexford. And again, it was damp and rainy and cold, and his followers were complaining about being tired. He went up to another house and he knocked on the door. The man opened it, and Patrick told him what he wanted. And the man said to him, come in, Falcha, you're welcome. You're as welcome as the flowers in May. Come in. Well, this man couldn't do enough for Patrick and his followers. Wonderful food, fine wine, a bed for each one of them to sleep on, and even made breakfast for them the following morning. And well, Patrick said to the man, he says, money I have none, but if you wish, I will give you my blessing. Well, the man got down on his knees, and Patrick's followers were so excited. How is Patrick going to reward this wonderful man? For Patrick raised his hands over the man and said, may your house be the smallest. May your cattle be the darkest. And may you marry a woman who's no picture. And Patrick's followers said, oh my God, there must be something wrong with him. How could he say this to this wonderful man who treated him so well? And the man was on the floor himself, almost in tears. But no one said anything because it was Patrick. Well, that man did marry a plain-looking woman, but she was very smart. And when he proposed building a big house up at the top of the mountain, she said, no. I was brought up in a small little house down here in the valley, and we were very comfortable, and that's what we'll build. And that's what they did. And when he proposed going out and buying a herd of white cattle, she said, no. They're just for decoration. We'll buy a herd of the black pollies. They're better for the milking. And that's what they did. In the meantime, Patrick returned to Tara to rest himself for his labors. And that winter, one of the worst storms swept across the Irish countryside, and the winds swept across. Now, the man who built the house way up at the top of the mountain, the winds came along and swept the roof off it, and the house almost collapsed. But the man who built his house down in the valley, well, the winds passed over, causing no destruction at all. And as was common at that time, the O'Neill clan raided into the community on a regular basis. Well, they had no problem finding the white cattle, but the black ones, well, they were covered under the shade of darkness. And to make matters even worse, the man who built his house way up on top of the mountain, his wife, seeing she no longer had her beautiful house, she no longer had her white cattle, packed her bags and went back home to her family, leaving her husband brokenhearted. But the man who built his house down in the valley, well, he had his very comfortable house, and he had his herd of black pollies. And he and the wife were very, very happy together. So you can see, in both situations, Patrick was right, which leads to the old saying, always, always listen to the words of a saint at least twice. Thank you very much for listening.
Great ending, Jim. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fun. Yeah, I've heard that story before, and I can hear it many more times. I enjoy the way you tell it with your energy. And thank you for taking us to Ireland. So far, we've had the Native American tale. We've been to Japan via India, and now we're hearing some Irish stories. Well, our next storyteller is well known to the Storytelling Association of California community, Liz Nichols. She is one of the founders of the Contra Costa Tale Spinners, which meets on the last Thursday of the month. And for any of the storytellers here tonight, if you want to put your information in the chat where people can contact you, please do that. It's a great event. And also StorySAC, the Storytelling Association of California, has a list of all the swap groups, and everyone meets at least monthly. So many opportunities to hear and some opportunities to tell stories. So in Liz's bio, I love the way she starts this. She said, at the age of 10, she got lost in the mythology and folklore section of the public library and has never left. So Liz tells amazing stories. She's told with the Asian Art Museum, to Sierra Storytelling Festival, of course, with her own group and other swap groups, and has been a director of StageBridge. And for those of you who don't know what StageBridge is, it's a center for storytelling for seniors. And there's all kinds of workshops and great events. It's StageBridge. I think it's in Oakland. Is that correct, Liz? Okay, so please welcome Liz Nichols.
Thank you so much, Ed. First of all, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I appreciate the introduction, but I'm not one of the co-founders of Contra Costa Tale Spinners. I'm just one of the current co-hosts. And I was not the director of StageBridge, which is the oldest senior theater company in the US. I was just the director of the storytelling program. So just don't want to get too big for my purpose. So anyway, I want to tell you a fable tonight, an Aesop's fable that I don't think you've heard. At least I had never heard it till quite recently. Once a bat lost her grip on the tree in which she was roosting, and she fell to the ground. And she landed and wandered straight into the nest of a weasel. Now the weasel saw this happen and was like, oh my, how wonderful. My next meal has just landed in my lap. And not only that, it's a mouse, my favorite. And the bat looked up at the weasel and said, oh, please, please don't eat me. Don't eat me. Have mercy. And besides, I'm not a mouse. I'm a bat. Now, this weasel had never seen a bat. Maybe she had heard of a bat, but in her little weasel mind, there was no picture of a bat. So she looked and said, "No, you're a mouse. And I really have been looking forward to having some mouse." And the bat said, "How can I be a mouse? Don't you see I have wings?" So the bat looked again. She looked, but she didn't really see. The weasel looked again at the bat, but she didn't really see the bat. Not really. Looked. I've got it. You're a bird. You must be a bird. You have wings. You're a bird. And I don't really like birds so much. And the bat started to say, no, I just told you I'm a bat. No, never mind. I'm a bird. I'm a bird. And you said you don't like birds, so I think I'll be off now. And the weasel let the bat go. And the bat decided to find a different tree to roost in. But sad to tell you, sometime later, the bat lost her grip again, and she fell to the earth again. And wouldn't you know it, she landed again in another weasel nest. And now this weasel was also excited. Here's my next meal, right come to me. And it's a bird, my favorite. And the bat looked up and said, "Oh, please don't eat me. I'm not a bird, I'm a bat." And again, this weasel had never seen a bat. And so she was like, You're a bird. You have wings. I know a bird. And the bat said, "Wait a minute, take a closer look. Birds have feathers, don't they? Look again, I have fur. I have no feathers. How can I be a bird?" So the weasel looked again. He looked at the bat, but she didn't see her, not really. You're a mouse. That's what you are, you're a mouse. And I don't really like mice. So in this way, the bat, by changing her tune to fit the circumstances, managed to escape, not just once, but twice. That's the fable of the bat and the weasel. The weasels. But now this story was assigned to me in a class that I recently took on traditional stories and contemporary social issues. How to take a fairy tale, a fable, and relate it to our own lives. So the assignment was to take that and think of how it connects. And so I thought about it, and I remembered something that happened to me sort of not so long ago, and I'd like to share it with you. The doctor will see you now. The doctor will see you now. My friend Tommy and I were sitting in those hard orange plastic chairs in the sterile waiting room of a medical clinic. It was the medical clinic run by the U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs. And it was in Window Rock, Arizona, the capital of the Navajo Nation, Navajo Reservation. I was there with my friend Tommy. It was the year 1976, a very big year, right? Our country turned 200. We both turned 21. We were part of the organizing committee for a group of students, college students from all over the US and all over Japan, who were traveling from coast to coast. We had had a wonderful trip. One of our friends on our committee, John, was studying social work at the University of Arizona, and he'd been interning on the Navajo reservation. So he set up this whole visit for us. And it had been a wonderful couple of days. We learned so much and understood, experiences that we never could have had on our own, meeting cultural leaders, political leaders, learning about traditions, learning about contemporary problems. And we were going to go the next day and take a long bus ride and a plane ride to Los Angeles for the last stop on our tour. So Tommy and I, by the way, Tommy was one of quite a few Japanese American students who were on this trip, who had really appreciated the chance to meet people from the country where their ancestors had originally come from. We were about to go to Los Angeles, but the problem was, there was a problem. Tommy was not feeling well at all. It wasn't an emergency, but she had some underlying health issues, and she didn't want to get on that bus and that plane without seeing a doctor. So that's why we were there, sitting as the nurse called out, "The doctor will see you now. The doctor will see you now." Finally, she called Tommy up, and she handed her one of those clipboards. You know the kind of clipboard I'm talking about? The one, it's brown, and it has a pen attached to a string. And you know what you have to put. You have to put your name and your date of birth and your address and so on and so forth. And she did all that. And then under all that were two boxes that neither of us had ever seen before in the doctor's office. One said white, and the other said Indian. There was a little checkbox. Now, since Tommy didn't fit either of those categories, she just left that blank and she brought it back up to the nurse. The nurse, without looking up, she takes it, she looks at it, and she pushes it back. "You forgot to fill out the bottom." Tommy says to her, "I left that blank. I can't fill that part out. I don't fit into one of those boxes." "Look," said the nurse, "everybody fills out one of those boxes. You've got to fill out one of those boxes." Tommy said, "Excuse me?" And the nurse looked up. Tommy said, "I just tried to explain to you. I am an Asian American. I can't put a check on one of those boxes." And the nurse looked at Tommy. She looked at her, but she didn't really see her. And she said, "Look, if you can't check one of those boxes, then we can't see you here. We can't see you here." Now, luckily, we went home and Tommy started feeling better and everything was fine. We got on the plane the next day. But what would have happened if she wasn't fine? What would she have done? What would I have done? And I realized, thinking back on this, that there are times in life where people, especially people in power, can't see us or can't accept us for who we are, who we really are. And sometimes, like in these two stories I just told you, we can escape, we can survive without harm. But let's face it, we never really can.
Thank you so much. What a powerful story and fantastic idea to take a fable and connect it with some personal experience like you did. Could you
If anybody wants to take that class, I'll put the information about it in because it's going to be given again by the brilliant and wonderful Sheila Arnold, who some of you may know from Hampton, Virginia, who, because of Zoom, could teach a class here in California.
How long is the class and the commitment for that?
I don't know. Let's see. Sarah Armstrong from SAC Board is here, and she was in the class with me. It was about 5 sessions. No, it was 8 sessions. Eight sessions.
8 weeks.
8
yeah.
sessions. Great.
I'll put the information in.
Thank you. Well, any workshop or any advice you can get from Sheila Arnold is well worth it. So I would encourage you to check those things out. And a lot of those things are posted at the Storytelling Association of California website. And for those of you who are not members, please consider joining. A membership is $30 annually. Correct, Sarah? And $50 for a 2-year subscription. We put on lots of amazing events. And there's one that many of you should check out. It's called Silk, Stories in Living Color. And that's where people pair up, they work with a coach, and they develop stories around social justice issues. And we've had 6 events, I think, so far. And we're continuing to do that. We're also looking for other platforms to put them on when we get pairs of tellers. So in an event, each teller has 10 minutes. So the total of 40 minutes of actual storytelling, and then there's a 20-minute discussion period of the issues that were raised. And there's 2 pairs of tellers. And so it's definitely a worthwhile event, and you should check it out. All right, our next storyteller is Bobby Kincaid. I've known her for a while, especially through the Story Swap group, the Belmont Mixed Bag Story Swap group, where I've heard her tell fantastic folk tales. That's her focus, our folk tales and myths. She also has written a book. Can you tell us briefly about that book before you begin your storytelling?
Okay, I'm writing a book called Damsels Overcome, and it's about women in folktales who were servitude to a certain narrative, traditional narratives. And unfortunately, between the 16th and 18th century, it was written by men. But as a child and at Folks Art and, not Folks Art, at the Asian Art Museum and through the storytellers, I have learned that these damsels really have powers and skills that we can use. And I started out thinking it was only about women, and then about halfway through, I learned that these norms and standards of the tradition that was written centuries, or feels like centuries ago, impair all of this. So my book goes on, and this is, we start out very much into the male narrative, and now we're getting into where I can find stories about females, and that's where Durga sits in. She's from India, and when I was studying at the Asian Art Museum, she popped up, but she came through as the demon was the big guy. It was all his voice and whatever, and I was very discouraged. And then finally, she showed up with her voice, which made all the difference in the world. And she's a warrior, and I needed a warrior. My mother was a warrior, and women need warriors. And so tonight, with the help of many, many gods, let's hope that I can tell you Durga, who saved the gods.
All right, thank you so much.
Did I go? All right. The Hindu gods were in trouble. This horrible demon had come up from the Netherlands, and he had taken over the earthly gods, and they were roaming into the cities and hiding with the people. Then he overreached, and he went up and he conquered Indra in the heavens. He took his castle, he stole his music and his musicians, and Indra was mad, and he was storming, and all the gods, 300 of them, met in the Hindu mountains, and they were drumming and praying, and pretty soon Vishnu, the protector, came to join them. And then after that, Shiva stepped down from his meditation and joined them. And Brahma, the creator who makes mistakes, came from his hiding in his cave, and he joined them. And they were just pounding and beating, and the anger. And all of a sudden, the ground burst open with this steam and a lot of booming. And standing before them was a mere woman. She was dressed in yellow. She was petting her lion. She had a sword by her side. She had her bow over her shoulder with her arrows in the bag behind her. And they looked at her, and then they they drew back, and she said, don't draw back. I'm from sound and space and energy and time. I come from the earth. I'm the Shashti voice. Diva is my body. And they went back a bit, and she says, no, I've come here. I've come to help you defeat the foe. Me, Maisha, the buffalo demon. I'm here to protect the innocent, the scriptures, and the law. And they stopped and looked at her, and she says, I'm part of you. Shiva, my face, my third eye. Vishnu, my 6 arms. Brahma, my feet for balance so I can battle. And Surva, the golden skin you gave me. And the Milky Way, thank you for my wraps, my red wraps. And Queen Snakes, thank you for the beads that I can wrap my wraps with. And the gods acknowledged her and came forward. And she said, I want to thank you for the attributes you've given me, the weapons that I can use against the foe. And she said, Destiny, the shield is fantastic. Ingrid, your lightning rods will really help me. Water God, this noose and this wrap and this shell that I can blow from my victories will really come in handy. And the architect who built the heavens, thank you for your axe. Wealth, your club, it's so well balanced, and this nectar, I will tie it to my beads and I will drink it when I need it. Vishnu, your disc, balanced perfectly, it'll come in. And Angie, that sharp sword of yours with the fine point. And Shiva, your trident with the 3 prongs, that will come in very handy. Well, the gods looked at her, and while she was speaking, she looked around the group, and she could see the shame of Brahma. He had given that buffalo demon a boon that nothing could kill him. The demon wanted her mortality. He said, no, the only thing that can kill you is a mere woman. And then Angie, she looked at Angie, the fire god, and he really was guilty and full of shame. Angie is the one that had given the father of this evil buffalo demon the boon to take over the Netherlands, the underground, the earthly realm, and the heavenly realm. And he was, and then there were the earth gods who were hiding when they could within the people because they were also ashamed. They were really waiting for this demon to wear out, but he never wore out. And that's when he went after Ingrid, the 10,000-eyed god of heaven. And Ingrid had called them together. Well, they were a little bit more warmed up to her. And she says, now remember, I have come to defeat your foe. He is my enemy also. And as she looked in the crowd, she saw 2 beings with lesser light. She took that horn and she blew it, that shell, and she blew it, and the earth shook. And these 2 went up over the hill. And before long, up on the ridge were warriors. They were on elephants, they were on horses, they were on camels, they even were on mules. And 2 of the generals came down and they said, conquer, Maisha wants you to be one of his queens. And Durga looked at them and she said, no, I'm the foe. I have come to step on him and push him back under the earth into the underworld. And she looked at them and she blew a breath, and all that army was just gone. And the 2 demons went up over the hill, and she waited. She blew her horn and the earth shook again and the world shook again. And about that time, here came another set of warriors on their camels, on their horses, on their mules. And 2 generals ran down and said, oh, Maisha wants you to be the main queen. And she said, he's not listening. I'm not going to be his main queen. He goes back to the underworld under my feet or he dies. And they said, okay. And she took her bow and she took her arrows and she just shot that whole army. And these 2 ran up over the hill. Well, next came Maisha. Oh, he was handsome. He was strong. He had gold and silver on. He had golden wraps on. He carried his shield and his spears and his axe. And he said, Durga, You can be my main queen. You can rule with me equally. Durga knew that he knew she was his doom, and she said, you haven't heard, Maisha. You are to go back to the Netherlands now. If not, I am your doom. And with that, she pulled back, she raised her shield, and she sent the lightning rods from Ingra at him. Well, at that instant, he turned into this big buffalo, and he was snorting, and her lion jumped on him, and then Maisha turned into a lion, and they were scrabbling and biting, and Durga got out her noose and her hook that was given to her from the water god, and she had the lion by his neck, and he turned into an elephant, and she had her lion up in the trunks of his, and he was squeezing him, and Durga couldn't stand it, so she took out the architect's axe and chopped off his head, and the lion flew down and flew over, and all of a sudden there was Maisha as a buffalo demon again, and he was snorting, and he was pulling his claws in, and his horns were ripping up the rocks and the earth. And Durga kind of relaxed, and she took that nectar, she drank it, and that surge of energy went through her, and it rumbled through the earth, and it went up to the sky, and that demon started coming towards her, and she took that club from the wealth god, and she pounded him, and as he was trying to gather his balance, she jumped on him, and with that spur from Angie, the fire god, who made the mistake, she stabbed him and stabbed him and stabbed him, and all of a sudden she took out her own sword, and she cut off his head, and here was that demon trying to squeeze out, and she took Shiva's trident and stabbed him through the heart, and he went boom on the ground, and all was quiet, not a sound. Pretty soon flowers came tumbling down from the heavens, and there was applaud, and the gods were all yelling and praising, giving themselves praise, and Durga said, now wait, my boon to you is, if ever you want help, pray, chant, or call me. And with that, they went on celebrating, and she went around, threw them, and gave back their weapons, because they would need them to fight for justice and the scriptures and law and defend the innocents. And then she slipped back and went down to the pools in the earth. But remember, she is always there to help the gods, and all you need to do is ask her. And that is the story how Durga helped the gods, saved the gods. I did meet her when I was a little kid. I met her out in the field once. She was dressed in yellow, but I couldn't figure out who she was until I went to the Asian Art Museum, and there her story was. And I said, Durga, I've known you for a long time. Okay?
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the story and the theme. I really appreciate it. And I always enjoy your telling.
Thank you, Ed.
All right. So our next storyteller, Denise McCormick, comes from New Jersey, and she's president of the Patchwork Quilt